Okay, so I want to show you how to kind of, continue the work on the head here. Last I showed you, we just sort of stopped with the basic shape. How do you add on kind of a snout? And I wanted to also say that, you can manipulate. So this is additive. You can do manipulative to create shape too. So if I want little eye sockets, I can push in a little to create divots or dents in the clay. I can also push out from the inside. So if I want a cheek, or if my animal or my person needs a little bit of a shape that way. So you can see the difference between the shape on this side, a puffed out cheek, and a dented an eye compared to this side. I think that's important to see that just through manipulation, we can start to change it. So I'm making my little llama head, and I wanted to show you, I'm thinking of, this is kind of the head I like, and I want to put some big ears and stuff like that. So I'm going to take you through kind of some of that. So I have my resources either on my computer screen or here printed in this case, so that I can be looking and say, okay, I really want that nose to kind of have a cutesy curved up. That might not be super real, but that's what I want. So I don't want this realistic head shape. I want the cute one. So you have the freedom, obviously, to combine. I want you to combine your resource images. Don't just take one and try to copy it. So you're using your fingers to manipulate that clay. You might also be adding clay or taking it away a little bit to create shape. But let's talk about adding bigger pieces on. So for the ears, for example, I need to make the ears. There's sort of two approaches to this, and I'll tell you which I like better. Some people will just sort of flatten out pieces of clay. And if you're doing this on your canvas, it won't stick to your table. But if you flatten it out, you'll probably get a little texture to it. And so your rib tool that you made is handy for smoothing out the piece of clay so that it doesn't have this clay texture. So you can see the clay texture here, and this one is smooth, right? So I would do that if you're going to do that approach. And the approach is that I'm laying something here and then I'm kind of cutting the shape out I want. So if I want an ear, I might draw the shape of that ear and then sort of cut it out. I call this the cookie cutter approach. It works. Don't get me wrong, it works. But I don't think it's the best approach. So the other reason is at home, I didn't give you a great cutting tool. So if you have a plastic knife or an X-Acto blade or something, then you could cut this out and you could use that piece. So let's talk about how you can sculpt it if you're not gonna cut it because I don't have a cutting tool. Or you're thinking, well, Miss LaFour said that's not how she does it. I wanna do it how she does it since she's been doing it for a while. Okay, hold on one second. So the other approach is to more sculpt it. So what I'm gonna do is take a small piece of clay, slightly bigger than what I think I need for an ear, and I'm gonna sculpt it in my hand. So an ear, when I look at my ears of my little guy, I mean, they're kind of wider here and they get a little pointier. They're also curled for my llama ear. They actually are a flat piece that curls. So I'm just gonna try to mimic that. I'm gonna roll it in my hands, kind of create wider at the bottom, narrower at the top, and then I'm going to start to flatten by pressing the clay. And if I press it in a way where I'm really not just squeezing it, but I'm thinking about trying to form an ear shape, I'm starting to get a little ear already, right? And so just by manipulating the clay in your hands, what I call free sculpting, you can create a lot of these details. So now I have a more flattened piece, right? And I can also start to curl it. So that little llama's ears I noticed looked really curled. And so I can manipulate this now flattened piece into more of a curled edge. Now, I might not use this whole ear. I might trim some of it off so it's not so tall because I want to think about proportion, and this is really big. But this is a good example of how to get started. And the nice thing is that I've used a small piece of clay. If it doesn't work, wet your fingers and try again. If it's too big, take half of it off, wet your fingers and try again. So the beauty of working with this clay is that nothing is really permanent until you let it dry. So you can keep working with it until you let it dry. All right, so I've got my little ear here and I ripped half of it off to kind of get it a little bit better, what do you call it? A little better proportion to my little llama. And now I need to attach it. Remember, we're not going to be doing slipping and scoring. We should be, and if we were in the classroom working with stoneware, we would be. But because we're at home with the air dry clay, we're going to skip that step, and instead we're just going to use a little bit of water as our glue, as our slip. And then I'm still going to score a little bit. And scoring is just scratching up the surface where I'm going to attach two pieces. So let's talk about slipping and scoring. You can do it just with a pencil. You can do it with your needle tool, your pin tool will work well. So I'm going to scratch the surface of the clay, just little hatch marks, in both places where I'm attaching. So I do it on my ear, and I also do it on the head. And then I'm gonna take these two pieces and I'm gonna stick them together. And I'm thinking about how I want this ear to be angled. And I'm looking at my resource while I do that. So when I look at this guy's ear, I realize it shouldn't be facing out like this. These llama's ears are kind of facing out and forward a little bit. So I put it on. And then the important thing with slipping and scoring, slip is just water in our case, remember, is that you also have to seal. So there's 3 S's, slip, score, seal. Sealing is now attaching this piece on. And you can see I'm doing that just with my finger, right? Or sometimes fingers don't work. So what tool can I use? Can I maybe use the pin tool and then go back with my finger? Or the other end of the pin tool? Maybe just the end of a popsicle stick, I think works really well too, to get into these little tiny places. So slip, score, seal, anything you add on, and then you're gonna have to be kind of careful, right? Because this ear now is protruding out. So you're gonna have to start to be kind of careful with where you place it, how you wrap it, things like that. So attaching pieces is not that hard to do, but you do need to slip, score, seal. And I usually make both pieces first. I didn't do it, but I would make both ears so that I can look at them and say, yeah, they look the same before I put them on. Otherwise, you put one on and then you got to redo the process and it's harder. Okay, so make both, get them right, and then put them on. Let's talk eyes really fast too. I want you to really think about sculpting details, and I show this all the time in my classes. This idea that we don't want to just draw an eye into the clay. This does not look very cool, right? Instead, we want to sculpt that eye. So I'll show you on the other side. Actually, I'm going to show you on this side, the drawing. So I can draw an eye on here. You can even poke a little hole for the pupil. I can put some hair or whatever. I'm going to show you the difference between what this looks like and what this can look like. So I'm going to actually sculpt the eye. I'm going to take a small piece of clay, a small ball, and a trick with eyes, if you're doing any kind of eye, you don't have to do it this way, but sometimes if you just put a ball, even in a socket, it really bulges out quite far, right? So a good trick I've learned, if you have something to cut with, if you can find an X-Acto knife or something thin to cut with, even your wire cutter, you can make your ball, cut it in half, and then you have 2 eyes that are the same size and they're only half a sphere. So let's see if I can do it with my clay cutter. It's gonna be tricky, but I'm gonna try. Yep, it worked. So now I have 2 half circles that are the same size pretty much, and they're not gonna bulge out as much. So you take that eye that you've created, I'm gonna slip and score into my socket. So a little bit of scoring on both the pieces that you're attaching. Just a touch of water Not too much. Now, you guys, if you're getting slimy, if it's getting slimy, it's gonna be really hard to deal with. So don't get it slimy. And then I'm just gonna stick my eye in there. I'm gonna press it. And then here's the thing with sealing. If I'm adding a detail like this and I don't want to smudge it, I don't want it to look like it's blended in, we can still seal it up. You're just doing it very carefully. Let's see if you can get this. Very carefully with a tool around the edges. I can just sort of drag it. And what that's doing, a pencil would work too, is it's sealing it up without losing the definition of the eye. And for my llama, if you notice, I love his lazy eyes. I'm gonna do the lazy eyes on this one. So if I have an eyeball in there, maybe I need a little detail now. Maybe I do a little bit of carving or something, like a little texture or something on an eye that could be like more for a human eye or something. I'm gonna leave my guys smooth, but you could do some texture. And then I'm gonna add the lid. So that lid is gonna really make this look even cooler. Taking a small coil here, it's not that small. I'm gonna lay this over. Actually, because he's so lazy, what if I pinch this down a little bit? So I take my coil and I flatten it to a more flat piece, and then I can lay that on top of my little lazy eye. And then I'm gonna blend it, right? So slip score, oh, I've got a little slip in there. I didn't score, but it's okay because look at how much I'm gonna actually attach this. It's gonna be part of my little llama's head. So this becomes part of the head now. And do you see how I've started to get more of an eyelid over an eye? And if I don't like it, I can just peel that off and do it again. So what I really want you to see is the difference between the two sides, right? This is a sculpted eye with a sculpted lid, a sculpted ear, and don't forget, I even sculpted the cheek out a little and a socket. This is a drawn eye. I could have a cookie cutter cut out ear on there, and it's gonna look a lot better with these sculpted details. Okay, so that's your job, is to try to create a head that has some of these sculpted details. Don't worry about texture yet, that'll be later on.